Good evening and welcome to the 59th meeting of the Jacksonville Environmental and Appearance Meeting. We enjoy having you attend tonight. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. If you members will please take a minute to look at the agenda and then let me know when you will make a motion to accept it. Do I hear a motion to accept it?
I'll make a motion.
Right. Second. Thank you. The motion's been made and second, and we accept it. At this time, with the minutes, have y'all all read it? They were sent to us by email. Can I have a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Thank you. They will be accepted as they were sent to us by email. At this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to Dr. Washington for some comments, please. We are eager to listen to you tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to members tonight and to the listening audience. Before we get started with tonight's meeting, we want to take this opportunity and remember a very valiant man in our community, Lieutenant Colonel Alfred Keyes, United States Army, retired. It was learned by the committee this afternoon that Mr. Al Keyes passed away, so we want to take a moment of silence to reflect on him and to lift up prayers to his family at this moment. Amen. Thank you.
Al was a member of this commission for a long time.
Yes, that was before I came. And
Yes,
his
he was.
sister was
He
the
served
former.
very strong with us. We enjoyed it very much. At this time, we have some business within the committee. We need to elect officers right now for our chairman and our vice chairman. At this time, I would like to nominate Ms. Grace Halpert for chairman and Ms. Linda Smith Henderson for the vice chair. Is anybody like to nominate anybody from the floor? If not, do I hear a motion that we accept these for our chairman and vice chairman?
I'll make a motion that we accept the two presented people as chairman and vice chairperson.
Can all the people that accept these say aye?
Aye.
Any noes? We'd like to welcome Grace back as our chairman and Linda as our vice chairman. Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to serving us again. You know, you do a good job. Thank you very, very much. At this time, I'd like to welcome Ms. Pat Donovan Brandenburg back to be our speaker tonight. On stormwater update, we enjoy every time she comes. She brings a great big smile and great wealth of information. Thank you, Pat, for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
I just found out on Monday I was presenting.
Well,
But that's okay. October is normally the month that I do a stormwater update, so it wasn't a big deal. As you know, the city of Jacksonville has quite a few adopt programs, not only Adopt a Park, Adopt a Street, but we do have an Adopt a Stream program. Of that, we have 5 different groups that actually help with stream cleanups throughout the entire year. With that being said, this past year, they actually cleaned up 56 miles along the New River and some of its tributaries. But combining all of the Adopt-A programs, the Adopt a Street, Adopt a Stream, Adopt a Park, we actually cleaned 196 miles last year total. We had 276 participants, and we picked up 1,218 bags of trash. Now, my hero is Jim Wheeler.
yes.
He's been with us, with the city now for 12 years, and I pray every day that nothing happens to him because he will be irreplaceable. In the 12 years, he's picked up 12,333 bags. And these are the big 55-gallon trash bags. These aren't the little kitchen trash bags. These are the 55 gallons. And just in the year's time, he also did 196 miles by himself. He is such a trooper. If you see him, please tell him thank you. We would be drowning without Wills. The city of Jacksonville has a lot of buildings, and with every building, we have a number of stormwater control measures. For instance, our nanofiltration plant has some constructed wetlands that takes all of the runoff. Our public safety building has 7 underground sand filters. Our public services has 3 stormwater ponds. We inspect all of the city's B&Ps every single month throughout the year to make sure that they're always in compliance. And of the 140 B&Ps that we actually permitted through our permitting program, we actually inspect those twice a year, just to make sure that private is also in compliance. Some of our environmental grants that we actually received this year, we got $175,000 from the Attorney General in the form of an EEG or an environmental enhancement grant for phase 3 of the Oyster Highway project. We got another $100,000 from the North Carolina Wildlife Habitat Foundation and Bass Pro Shop, also for phase 3 of the Oyster Highway. And then we actually got $8,000 from the North Carolina Coastal Conservation Assistance Program, say that 5 times fast, for the rain garden, which you're going to see in just a moment. What you see here, this actually was designed by our horticulturist, which is Jason Smith with our Parks and Rec. He and I collaborated and we tried to make it more artistic. We are going to be adding more wetland plants down in the mulched area, but if you haven't seen it, it's directly across from City Hall. It looks very nice. But it's still a rain garden, and it is still one of those 7 miles of B&Ps that we inspect and maintain on a monthly basis. Another grant that we got through the North Carolina Coastal River Watch program was we got what is known as a trash trout. We actually installed this device in Scales Creek right before it passes under 24, and we will have numbers for you. I will have numbers for you in October of next year. We are getting a lot of trash out of this device, which means it is not making its way down Scales Creek and into Northeast Creek, which flows into the river. But we'll give you amounts next year, but it's going to be very high. We had to remove it for the hurricane, and any large named storms we will actually remove because we don't want it to actually cause flooding. But we check this weekly. And then the big news is the governor is declaring next week as Oyster Week. And on Thursday, the city of Jacksonville will be highlighting how the whole cleanup of the New River began as to where we are now. We began with the Wilson Bay Initiative back in 1997. And yes, I was here. Until today, which is with the Oyster Highway project. And what we want to do is show everyone what the project actually looks like. So we will actually have static displays where we build reefs inside. So if you can, there is an open house to the general public from 1 to 3. But for elected officials and city employees, and of course, all of y'all, please come from 11 to 1. We do have some refreshments. Again, I'm going to steal these. And we will have prizes as well. So if you can come out, join us for half an hour or for longer. We'll have videos. We'll have people explaining what we've done. So if you can join us, we would greatly love to have you. The Oyster Highway project has been beyond our wildest dreams as far as successful. We are up to $1.5 million in grants and private and commercial donations, all into the New River. It's astronomical. Phase 1 is where we actually built 6 reefs, which are the blue stars. Phase 2 is where the yellow stars are. So we've built with phase 1 and phase 2, 12 oyster reefs. an equal number on the east side of the river as well as the west side of the river, connecting Stones Bay all the way up to the city of Jacksonville and Wilson Bay. What phase 3 is doing is moving all of those reefs, well, 9 of the 12 reefs, from a ½ acre in size to an acre in size. We've gotten all of our permits, so we are increasing the size by another ½ acre. 9 of them, we'll do that, 3 of which though are very close to the unexploded ordinance on the base, and the base has asked us not to expand the footprint, but they are allowing us to double the amount of reefs within the existing footprint. So on those 3, we'll just double the amount of reefs.
And Pat, on that $1.5 million, all of that has gone into construction. That is
Absolutely.
not, we're not paying staff or
No.
anything like that. It has all gone into the river.
Absolutely. And the monitoring, you will, if you come on Thursday, you will literally see the data on everything from the finfish to recruitment to growth to mortality. We'll have graphs showing how wonderful they're doing. We were very blessed this year to actually receive the Pelican Award from the Coastal Federation for our ADV program. With the ADV program, we had 31 vessels throughout the river that were sideways, half underwater, listing, a number of things. Of the 31 vessels, the city of Jacksonville, and it wasn't just one department, it was a team. It was your stormwater water quality department, it was your streets department, it was your fleet, and it was your fire department. We all worked collectively to minimize cost to the city to remove these 20 boats. We pulled them over ourselves, the streets pulled it up, broke it into pieces, put it in their truck, carried it to the landfill. What would have cost over $100,000 had we paid a contractor was only about $5,000 to the city of Jacksonville. $5,000 because we did it with all of our forces, and our city employees are always our greatest asset. They were very helpful in this program. So again, of the 31, 21 were demolished and removed from the river. 5 were brought into compliance by the owners, and then 6 were removed from the river by the owners.
And
So-
ADV stands for Abandoned and Derelict Vessel.
Correct. And then every year, the number of illicit discharges from businesses and our homes continues to decline. When we first started the program, it was in the hundreds every year, and now because of public education and outreach and involvement, we're down to 36 this past year. And that is my report for stormwater and water quality for this year. Do y'all have any questions? Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question. Recently, Administrator Secretary of the Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C., Michael Reagan, announced within his department he has allocated $300 billion to address environmental injustices throughout various different neighborhoods in which, either due to pollution, due to climate change, contaminated waterways, that these injustices have basically caused basically irreparable damages. So I'm just wondering, with what has happened with the New River and with the pollution and all of our efforts, is there any possible way that we can tap into some of that funding of that money to continue our improvements with the Oyster Highway and the improvements with the New River?
Absolutely, as long as this gentleman right here tells me I can.
We always look for money. If it's available, we're gonna try to.
It was just recently,
Yes,
it was just recently announced, and it would be wonderful, because one of the things that clearly just stands out in my mind over by where Laguna Bay is around the Georgetown area, that at one point in time used to be the city dump. There was like a swampland over there. I remember, no, I don't remember because I do believe that I was not born when it happened, but I have heard individuals talking about that the only way that the Black community at one point in time, their access, if they wasn't driving on the dirt road from Georgetown to come to downtown Jacksonville, they had to cross the trestle. And basically you had to be aware about the train and the train whistle. So, you know, you either got on or otherwise you were going to have to jump into the water because you wasn't going to compete. So when I think about the end of that area and some of the damages that occurred, I just wonder whether or not if we could possibly tap into some of that funding for the betterment of our citizens to see some improvement, you know, even if it's on the New River and with the Oyster Bay, that even for some of those residents that's living in that area, some of those pollutions and contaminations that some individuals, some families still might be dealing with. Is there anything possible that we can do to tap into that funding and to bring that funding to Jacksonville to improve the lives of the citizens over there?
That's one of the things that I continually do is I try to look for outside funding, not to put a strain on city sources, but at the same time still improve the New River and the environment. I'm very passionate about that, and I've been fortunate to receive a lot of grants. We just went through around applying for ARPA funds to do a project at Northeast Creek, a living shoreline, do a restoration project of Scales Creek, as well as a stream restoration in Georgetown and along Shadow Ridge Road. So we've got 4 different grants in right now just with the ARPA money, and if I don't get funding, then yes, we will be going after the EPA funding. Wally's been very supportive.
Fantastic. That's just
We
a
look
whole,
for money
that's
anywhere
just
we
a
can find it.
whole lot of money from the feds and.
Well, and also what comes to mind is Phillips Park, because it was a unregistered landfill at one time. And it needs to be, it's on the state's list, but it, you know, before we can do much more with that park as a city, then we need to remediate that, or the state will. So that's certainly another opportunity. So there's several of those around that we need to look at.
Okay.
Thank you for suggesting.
Thank you for your presentation.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Wiley,
Yes, ma'am.
turn it over to you, please.
If it's all right with you, I'm gonna let Pat go. She's got to drive, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pat, for having
Thank
us.
you so
Thank
very much. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You do the same.
Good evening. Tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about something that City Council actually had a presentation on Tuesday night, and I know that we invited the council, the board to attend the council meeting as well. Ms. Harvick actually came, so we greatly appreciate that. Tonight what I wanted to do is take the presentation that was given to council, and if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to go watch it. It's available on our website, it's on G10. It will be running periodically. It's a great presentation from the U.S. Forestry Service. But what I did was I met with Mr. King from planning, and obviously the presentation, and then we attached the draft assessment for your review. And we want to talk about that assessment and talk about what next steps we might like to take as a committee. For the reason of, this is the Jacksonville Environmental and Appearance Committee, and as part of this committee, we have the subcommittee that is the tree board. So it is very relevant to the mission and purpose of this committee. Jacksonville has been a Tree City USA for 42 years. That is a long time. We have won 11 growth awards over the years, and we have, as you'll see in a few minutes, increased our landscaping requirements, and that goes noticed in this assessment. So you'll see that. The City of Jacksonville's landscaping requirements actually fall as requirements under the Unified Development Ordinance, which is, a lot of people refer to it as the zoning ordinance as it's formally known, but it's the Unified Development Ordinance. It establishes as development takes place in Jacksonville, how that development has to be built out, what landscaping requirements may exist, what buffer requirements may exist. We do not have a tree preservation ordinance, which means, we would go out and mark historic trees that can't be, taken out. We do not have a tree preservation ordinance, but admittedly, we have a lot of pine trees and not a lot of trees that we would be as concerned about preserving. But all of that is housed in the Unified Development Ordinance. And it's through those things that staff applies as development comes in that continues this effort. And then there's discussion of money that may be coming available, as the gentleman from the the North Carolina Forestry Service presented at council Tuesday night, that may be coming available that we could tap into to help for other things. So again, this tree canopy cover assessment was done as a partnership. It was run by the North Carolina Forestry Service, but it was done as a partnership with the city of Jacksonville. And the Forestry Service actually hired a professional consultant that does this type of work nationally to come in and perform this assessment. So it's a pretty detailed assessment based on industry standard across the nation. So it's not something that staff did internally or that we took our best guess at. The assessment was paid for from grant funding from following Hurricane Florence and Hurricane Michael, and largely because of the damage to the tree canopies that were caused by those storms. And then the area that we looked at for this assessment was really the city limits and the city's ETJ, which is extraterritorial jurisdiction. And basically, those are the areas that, of course, the city limits is the city provides all the services. We do all of the planning, the zoning, the building inspections, maintain the streets, the sidewalks. We maintain the parks, all of it. So obviously, the city limits are part of that. But the reason we included the ETJ is because we do have planning and zoning controls through the UDO, through power granted by the state, to apply our landscaping requirements in those areas. And the general reason for the ETJ is because as the city naturally grows, those are typical areas you would grow into. So as you see the map in the assessment and one that I've got on the screen, you'll kind of see that it's generally the area in the city and right there around the city. In discussion with the U.S. Forestry Service, we decided not to include the area on the base because the city really has no control over what happens on the base. So it's not like we could spend money to make improvements in landscaping or to set requirements that the base would have to then adhere to. So it makes sense that we would exclude that area of the city that is within Camp Lejeune, and we would include areas within the ETJ that we do exercise at least planning and zoning and building inspection control over. So the purpose was to conduct a vegetative landscape assessment. And this falls right into what Pat just talked about with stormwater. And you'll kind of see that in the assessment and maybe here on the screen in just a moment. The way that they conducted this assessment was using aerial photography that is high resolution. And it had to be so high resolution that to go back to get the resolution they needed, they actually had to utilize 2020 aerials. So admittedly, this 2020 is the data that this is based off of. And 2014 was the previous aerial resolution that they were able to use. So it kind of starts, the assessment compares 2014 and 2020. They took the landscape of Jacksonville and they broke it over 5 land cover categories. I'll show you those in a moment. And then they tabulated the data in 4 geographic boundaries. And I'll show you those also, and that's what Dr. Washington was referring to right before the meeting started. And then again, because they had 2014 data that they can compare to, along with 2020, they looked at they measured those changes over time. And then they provided recommendations. They had identified some opportunities for us and made some recommendations. And you'll see some of those right on the first page or second page in the executive summary. But if you flip to the second to last page of the report, there's a great recommendations that go into more detail in the draft report. So the 5 land cover classes that they use is urban tree cover or tree canopy. So those are urban trees, or Jacksonville's an urban area, that's why the term urban. Other vegetation, which is your sod, your bushes, your maybe your smaller understory type trees, your decorative landscaping, those kind of things. Your soil and your dry vegetation, so you're really talking about not impervious area, which is the next group, but area that may not have actual vegetation on it for one reason or another. It could be an active construction site, for example. And then impervious surface areas. That's parking lots, buildings, driveways, patios, things that water cannot penetrate. That's why it's impervious. The water cannot go through those surfaces, which means obviously they're not adequate for growing vegetation. And then the last is surface water, which is what Pat was just getting into. With all of our new development, we have stormwater requirements. There are different options for treating that water. The most familiar ones are the detention ponds because they're obvious, they're above ground. A great example of that is the one that we affectionately call Lake Target right beside Jacksonville Parkway. It runs almost the whole length of that building. So that is there for stormwater treatment. But this study classified those areas. Also looked at, which not really surface water, we do use other stormwater treatment methods. A great example is at our water treatment plant, we have constructed stormwater wetlands. So there's, it's a wet area, water does stand, but it's almost 100% vegetated. So it looks and feels more of a natural area than just an open pond that holds water. The geographic areas that were used is the total city limits and ETJ boundary, which you kind of see there in green. The zoning types, so what they did is, and I'll show you this in just a minute, they looked at our zoning for the city. So that would be your corridor commercial zones, your residential single family zones, your downtown residential zones. So you're talking land use areas, but not necessarily broken up by neighborhood. If you think about Western Boulevard from 24 all the way up to Gum Branch Road, that corridor is zoned commercial corridor. Because that's where businesses are located. So whereas if you take Country Club Road, you might have a mixed zoning, because Country Club Road, between the bypass and just before you get to the plasma place, that's all residential. And you may even have some, where Sandy Run Apartments is, some high density residential zoning there. So you have along Country Club, you may have anything from commercial to high density residential to a neighborhood business to low density residential. So it was broken up by zoning type. And the great thing about that is, if we choose to look at our zoning requirements, then you can look at what you require for each zone based on where we need to focus attention. And then it was broken down by census blocks, because that data is readily available. So it basically followed the census tracts. And that gets into an even smaller area. You may have a large neighborhood may have multiple census tracts, but it did break it down by census tracts. And then they went all the way down to the individual parcel. So every individual business or property, and examined at that level. So those are the 4 boundary types that they examined and applied those 5 classifications of coverage. Does that make sense? All right. So here's really the meat and potatoes of the whole presentation. This is the summary. This figure is exactly out of your, I see that you have it open. It is page 3, thank you. So you can look at it, but for the viewing public, you can see that this is a quick snapshot, a great digital visual of the report. So what it says is that the city has 41% tree canopy cover area. I told you that was in 2020 based on the high resolution aerial photography. In 2014, it was 4% less than that. So we have improved our tree canopy area by 4% across the entire city in ETJ, which is good, because if you think about development that has happened during that time, if you think about hurricanes that have happened during that time, even with those impacts, the city has continued to still grow our vegetative cover. So that's really a great thing. And then it kind of breaks down a few more numbers. You can see there's 29% possible planting area. So those are probably that soil classification where it shows as dirt or dry cover. Those are certainly opportunities for additional plantings. It also looked at where you may have large open areas where you could do, instead of just maybe grass, you could do other vegetation that would help with that tree canopy cover. And then you can see that there's also 29% of unsustainable areas. So if you think about parking lots, buildings, you could, I guess they do technically have green roofs now, but it really reduces the availability to plant a tree unless you go in and require somebody to take up parking area to put landscaping in. And I know that all of you are very familiar with Jacksonville. Some of you have been here longer than I have. I've been here about 22 or 23 years now. But you can see the differences in the type of development. You can compare, the old Bryn Mawr shopping center, Roses, and, it is literally a sheet of asphalt, to maybe some of the newer development up toward Cross Point Shopping Center or across the street at the Target Shopping Center, where you have, at least some landscaping islands mixed into that to break it up. And those are zoning progression over years with landscape requirements. What I can tell you now is, and I apologize, I don't remember the date, Councilwoman Washington, you might remember, But recently, within the last few years, we've changed our landscaping requirements or adjusted them. So now we require, additional street lawn and vegetation areas. We require tree canopy cover inside the parking lot. So our landscaping requirements really have gotten a lot better. And as development continues, you'll see some of that. Just a few key things to point out. Over on the kind of the right-hand side, you see that the residential single-family 7 district had the highest tree canopy cover area, while the downtown residential district had the lowest. That phrasing is a little bit misleading. Part of the reason is, if you look at our zoning maps, the residential single-family 7 zoning district is the largest. So, it doesn't look at it percentage-wise. It has the most because it is the largest. And just to give you an idea, that's all of Bryn Mawr. That's all of Northwoods. That's all of Carolina Forest. That's all of Williamsburg Plantation. And then you compare the residential downtown area, you're really talking that area closest to Willingham Park and spreading out from there with maybe some of Warlick Street and Bayshore Estates. So when you compare, and there's a lot of mature trees in that area. So that information's a little bit misleading, but I think the point of it is to show that, that residential single family 7 district on the other side of that tree, on the left-hand side, contained 43% of all plantable space throughout the city. So it has the largest, but it also has the greatest potential. And part of it is because it's the greatest area too. So, and currently we have no landscaping requirements for single family residents. What we do have in newer areas because of stormwater requirements are what we call BUA requirements, built upon area. And I'll just give you an example of where I live. I live in Williamsburg Plantation. My neighborhood has a stormwater permit. Our stormwater permit says that my lot, the lot that I live on, can have no more than 2,849 square feet, rounded to 50, but 2,849 square feet of impervious surface on my lot. So that includes my house footprint. Now it doesn't count if you've got a 2-story house or a 3-story house. It's the footprint. So it's the square feet on the ground. It includes my driveway, the little sidewalk leading up, my shed in the backyard, and I have an impervious patio because I don't have any additional square foot between my driveway because I have a wide driveway. So we had to be more creative. Now decks don't count against that. And pervious, you'll see the best example is if you drive down a street and you see somebody's driveway and it kind of looks very rough, a lot of times that is pervious concrete. It allows water to go through it. You don't get a straight 1-for-1 credit, but you get about a 50% credit. So only about half of that driveway counts against their impervious area. So we don't have any landscaping requirements per se. We don't have anything that says, Wally's house now has to have 2 trees and 3 bushes or, anything like that. But what we do have is Wally's lot can't have more than 2,849 square feet. Now, that is directly proportionate to our stormwater permit. Another, I'll give you an example that you mentioned Northwoods right before, and I think you mentioned Barn Street because we were talking about something we're going to talk about later. But Barn Street was constructed before there were stormwater requirements. So you could literally have a lot that if somebody hated mowing the grass, they could concrete the whole lot. And we have no requirements in that area. So it really depends on the area, what that lot was permitted under. But when you think about the statistics of it has 43% of all plantable space throughout the city, it's the largest zoning district, but it's one that we don't apply any landscaping requirements or anything to. So, those are things that I think that we can look at. And another one is this 1% of tree canopy shades impervious surface areas. To me, that's an opportunity for improvement. What does that say? That says that we have a lot of large parking lots out there with not enough trees in them. That's kind of what that says. Now, that may be how we choose to develop Jacksonville, through what council sets as our zoning requirements and our landscaping requirements through the zoning and the UDO. But I think that over time has shown that has become more of the trend to be to have greater tree coverage and vegetative coverage in especially commercial zoning districts. So great information on this slide. I kind of wanted to highlight that. And in a minute, we're going to talk about, well, how does that apply to this committee? Real quickly, this is in there. The gentleman that's from the NC Forest Service talked about this a little bit last night. I do not know what methodology they used. What I can tell you is they use industry standard methodology, but there are costs for not treating stormwater. There are costs for not having trees and not having, we are not in a air containment area, but some larger cities have that issue to worry about. They have to worry about air quality. We are geographically located in a coastal area that gets a lot of breeze. So that helps us. We don't have those kind of things. And of course, density obviously helps us with that as well. So you can kind of see that they've broken down. The report says that the city of Jacksonville and the ETJ receive roughly about $43 million worth of total annual benefits based on our current 41% tree coverage, which is a great thing. Now, these are not actual dollar figures that we get back, but it's a realized benefit. If you've got trees that shade a house, energy costs are lower because the trees help keep the direct sunlight off of the house. So there are some, while not direct, more direct benefits from tree canopy and vegetative cover. So this is my last slide. And then what I'd like to do is maybe have a brief discussion. I broke down the very last page of the written part of the report. And it looks like this: conclusions and recommendations. But basically what it recommends is that we leverage the results of this assessment to promote additional tree canopy. It suggests that maybe we prioritize tree canopy and vegetation expansion areas. And again, as Dr. Washington was actually mentioning, some good ways to do that is look at areas that have greater potential or that are eligible for other types of funding that we can use to help, those historically, I want to go to underutilized, but that's not the right term. Yeah, historical neighborhoods, exactly. And then we should look at developing outreach programs. As I listened to the presenter last night, one of the things, we have additional conversations set up with him. One of the things I'm curious about is he mentioned that more money would be becoming available. Some of what I wonder is, could some of that money be made if RS7 or RSF7 is one of our greatest potential areas, and we have the information broken down by individual parcel, could we help an individual property owner get money to maybe take out old impervious area, or transform some of their, open area to more of a tree-covered area, or some of those historic areas, and help them to establish additional landscaping. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if, a lot of times when you have grant funding and those kind of things, it comes to a municipality and we have to use it on municipality, on city-owned or city available resources. But it would be interesting to know if the report has said this is our greatest area, can we apply some of that?
And what might be, I just thought about something too, because, we're Hurricane Valley, when we have some of our trees that are damaged due to hurricane, is there something that we can cut down a tree and plant a tree because of the fact that the trees, were damaged during a hurricane, a natural disaster, if the language would allow for some of that in government funding?
I agree. That's a great opportunity. Because I don't know if you've ever had a tree taken down, but the city cannot go on private property and take a tree down. And it is very expensive. And for some property owners, it's not really feasible. The option is they let it fall and then they just deal with it when it falls.
Exactly.
So, I hate to say that, but it's expensive to take a tree down. So if we had an opportunity to take do an assessment of damaged trees and come in, take that tree out and plant a new tree in its place, that would be a great opportunity. And then focus plantings in high priority areas. Those are the big recommendations that came out of this report. Now that said, we started this as you are the Jacksonville Environmental Appearance Advisory Committee. I apologize, I left that part out. I forget that A. But
I call it GAC. That's putting those little acronyms together.
That's
that
right.
Came up my mind, GAC.
So, and we have the tree committee as part of this, and I recognize that as we move through this, this creates an opportunity for us to take information that's available, look at what we currently do, what are our actual practices, and then what recommendations might we like to make to our first board would be the planning board, because they're the ones that kind of make recommendations and make decisions based on planning and zoning, and then it goes to council for an actual public hearing and adoption. But so, my thought is maybe we have at our next meeting a work session that we look at, and maybe have Mr. King come in and present what our current requirements are of development, show you what those look like in practice, give you some real examples from here in Jacksonville, and say, you know what, we think we're headed in the right direction. Maybe we try to focus on something else rather than just ordinance related. Or do we say, maybe we could do a little bit better, and maybe we make a recommendation and talk with the planning board about possible zoning amendments that could be carried to city council. But I think this is a great opportunity that fits right in the mission of this committee. So with that, what I would like to propose is and I've already talked with Mr. King just to make sure that would be okay with him, is to have him come to your next meeting, talk about what the actual requirements are currently for primarily commercial development, and move forward from there, and then decide, if that's not where we need to concentrate, then what next opportunity might we like to look at?
Two quick questions,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Hanson. You mentioned, I believe, that we currently do not have a tree preservation.
No, ma'am, we do not.
So is there any way possible that Mr. King and his staff can bring us an example, maybe from other cities
Sure.
that have adopted a tree preservation, to sort of like give us an idea. That might be one of our future goals, if
Sure.
not an intermediate goal we wanna work on. And then the second, I was gonna ask you, with the illustrious history of being 42 years as a tree city, is there any other municipality that has greater years than Jacksonville?
I don't
Do
know,
you
I have to look. I do not know.
Because there should be some type of grand finale, grand presentation from the governor to say, wow, environmental award such as this, because 42 years is a long time.
It is.
Oh my goodness.
It is.
It will be interesting to see if we're one of the forerunners in the state, or we are right there in the competition, or that, but that's says a testament to you ladies and gentlemen that have been serving on this committee. So kudos to you. I'm putting in a plug for Governor Roy Cooper, but until he does so, you're hearing it from your council liaison that thank you. So thank you.
Otherwise, we're trailblazers.
There you go. We need an award. Yes, absolutely.
42 years is very impressive.
It really is.
I mean, if you think about the council, the number of council members there's been in that time, the changeover in staff, I was in diapers, so.
Do we have a moniker that talks about our tree city? The only reason that I ask is that when I visit my second home down in Wilmington, I know Wilmington has.
I know that we've had some signs, I don't know, let me look.
I think
I
that
know at
would
one
be great
time-
when we look at our entrance and our corridor coming into the city, where we have the city of Jacksonville. It would just be so illustrious to be able to have that Tree City 42.
We do have some signs.
There's one out here by the parking lot, isn't there?
Yeah,
Is it?
Yeah, but I think they're smaller, like informational type
Like
signs.
boom, like
Yeah.
bam, right there, so you can see that, but that's.
But when that's your new information building gonna be built here.
Mhm. Okay.
So, I think that's this is a great thing that came out that, the city benefited from. We do have some staff time in it, but we do not have, the city did not have to pay for the consultant. This is one of those where we were able to leverage other opportunities in order to come out with something that we think may be beneficial for the community in the future.
There's one thing we did, and I don't think we've ever finished it either, is those Beirut Memorial trees, the grove out there
Yes,
on
ma'am.
17 South. And this, if I'm not mistaken, the DOT was supposed to put us a great big sign out there distinguishing that is the Beirut Memorial Grove. Now, it's never been finished.
It's on hold, I can tell you right now. I've talked to Fernando about it, it's on hold.
We need to write a letter or something to the governor and see if he won't go ahead and do it. Yes, because that should have been done. That should have already been done and completed, because we were crunched into doing that, when they wanted us to get rid of the Bradford trees out there on the June Boulevard. And we, nationwide, was the decision made, we had to do it because of the Marines here and their families all over America. And it should already have been done. And we need to put some pressure on somebody to get it done.
We'll check into that for you.
I wish you would, because
Yes, ma'am.
we were told it would be completed, the trees would be planted, and some of them died, and then we replanted those trees. And it's a beautiful sight out there
It
right
is.
now, but nobody knows
Exactly.
why those trees are planted there and that beautiful landscape in the front.
We will try to find out for you.
I would appreciate it.
And figure out what next step would be if that letter comes from this board as the tree board or from council. So we'll try to get some information and try to put pressure in the right places.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Derek, would you like to talk about adopt,
Absolutely.
or,
As always, I appreciate you guys taking your time to sit with us, on these nights. And we're getting better at the notification and the participation. We put a lot into this, and we do appreciate your guys' time. So with that, we've had a couple new organizations adopt some areas in town. Pretty excited about it. The Kings of the South Motorcycle Club. They were very interested in finding a street that they could impact in a good way, and they adopted 2 streets. That it's really one street that kind of turns into 2 streets, with Eastwood Drive and South Drive. If you're not familiar with where that is, it kind of encircles the Jack Amyette Rec Center, and as you know, that was badly damaged during Hurricane Florence, and we're putting a lot of money into rebuilding that. So that area is going to be their focus to keep clean, and we'll have them for 3 years.
Now, will they still be able to move with that, considering a private developer has bought town center?
It's city right of way.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, because it's the street
Yeah.
that they adopted. And next, a portion of the Rails to Trails has been adopted by HeroHomes.com. Just had him in my office, let him get one of those poles. He's excited about that too, very motivated, already completed his first cleanup. And this was just adopted a week ago, maybe?
Yes.
Where the city manager signed that agreement. So he's on board for 3 years as well. And the portion of trail that he adopted is a high trafficked area, going from North Marine Boulevard all the way down to Ellis. So if you drive anywhere where that you intersect with that trail, you usually see someone on it.
Sure do.
Walking up and down.
And it's a long section too.
Sure is.
And that's an area where they frequently use for exercise themselves. So they kind of figured, hey, why not?
The bikers use it a lot,
Yes.
bikers.
And then right here, close to City Hall down the street, Newbridge Middle School, they have not adopted it. I'm still working with them because there's going to be children involved. There's a few more pieces to the adoption. But they're looking at the Warwick Street. And as you know, a portion of Warwick Street has just been resurfaced. And that street also kind of wraps around the middle school there. And in particular, the students that are going to be participating is the Honor Society.
That's great. That's
So
great.
we're looking forward to that and working with them to make sure that the youngsters have all the right documentation, getting them out there before they do a cleanup. And then we have us, so we're looking forward to spend another Saturday. College Street and Fourth Street, so
Ooh, that's
I was-
next week after next.
looking at the calendar, November does not look like there's really not a good weekend in November between the 2 holiday weekends. We also have I think there's a parade, it's at some point in November, that, some of y'all might wanna attend, it might conflict, so. I'm proposing October 22nd at 9 a.m. This month.
College Street.
For a cleanup.
Court Street.
And if you've been out there before, it's not too terribly, I
We had a
mean,
good time
they've
last
been-
time.
those areas have been doing a really good job of keeping it, squared away and kept up.
We had a
I walk it once a week, pick up trash.
Yeah.
But while you're talking about that street, the intersection of Court Street and New Bridge Street, I guess if this goes down there, there's a gigantic bush. I don't know why it's still there, but there's a gigantic bush there. It's full of poison ivy.
Wow.
But it's sitting at the intersection and it just grows out and grows out and grows out. And I bet it's 15 or 20 feet tall right now. And it's probably about 12 or 15 feet wide. It's right through the intersection. You can't miss it. It's just sitting there. And it's full of poison ivy. And I'm thinking, here's the courthouse. Everything's down here. People walking by. Poison ivy, have fun.
Yeah.
That's a mess.
In
What time?
Court Street, not Court
Is
Street,
it-
College Street, for the ones that do that cleanup on College Street, you'll walk right past the new rain garden that Pat had up on the screen she talked about, which is right over here. That looks really good, so. Yeah, 9 a.m. unless someone has a better date and time, I'm open to it.
I will be
Okay.
standing on a soccer field with 18 girls, so I might be late.
Not at all.
That's
It didn't take us long.
I will be in
I
Northwoods.
think we were
but-
done in about an hour.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll be.
It didn't take us long because we split.
Mhm.
Yep, and we kind of meet over there where the old Onzo Outreach is. There's a parking lot there. There's some dumpsters there, and we'll have gloves, trash bags. I got some more poles if they all want to use them.
Okay.
Sounds good.
If you're available. All right, October 22nd it is.
Okay.
Be a busy weekend.
Okay, I'd like to
Memorial
remind
weekend.
It is.
each one of you members to look at your sheet of paper, make sure that your absence and then your present on these sheets are correct. If they're not, take it to Derek,
Yes.
okay? And at this time, is there anything y'all would like to openly discuss or anything like that?
We have a few things that we would like to add. We didn't add them as agenda items. We thought they'd just be good updates.
Okay.
We can go through those real quick.
Sure.
So we have a recycling report for you. This is from Michael Connors in Sanitation. If you recall, the city now has to pay to dispose of recycling, and we have a budget. So just to give you an idea, this is the first quarter of FY '23. To date, we have collected 151 tons of commercial, 422 tons from residential. Our disposal cost so far has been roughly $20,400. Our budget for the year is $237,000 to dispose. So if you break that out by quarters, we would have expected to have expended about $59,000 or so. So we've done very well. Part of the reason for that is the big bold statement that you see up there. We're in the top 5 for cleanest recycling stream in North Carolina. So that is a testament to our residents and our sanitation crews. If they're getting ready to dump recycling that looks like it might contaminate our stream, because it really only takes one can. I know that sounds weird, but if you have a recycling truck and it all goes into the same truck and it gets compacted together, as soon as you put one can in there that's contaminated, you've now contaminated a portion of that load. So we do get the calls from time to time, they didn't take my recycling or they dumped my recycling in the trash truck. Well, this is probably the reason, because we've looked in there and there's things in there that should not be in there. And if we take it, it costs us money in the long run. So we just pay to dispose of it at the landfill. And it's part of being, that being in that top really does translate into some real savings. So with the adopted budget, we've had no additional fee to residents or businesses for FY '23. We did have to up that last year, if you'll remember, because of that requirement. And what happened is our contract with Sunoco, that was the recycler, expired, so we had to go to a new contract. And this is pretty standard. Also, what helps in the savings that I did not mention is that the recyclables do have some value. It's a commodity, so the value is weighted on what people will pay for it, and that fluctuates with the market. And recently, it has been up. everything but glass. So the recycling market has been up, which does help offset some of those costs. Because the way it works is if it's based on a ton. So if if the cost is above what the typical market average is, it actually reduces our cost for disposing. So just good news all the way around there. So that at the end of the year, we expect that we'll, and knock on wood, the market doesn't change drastically. We expect to have some significant savings in that budget. Yes, ma'am.
What are some of the commodities that are valuable to them?
Metal, aluminum,
Oh, okay.
corrugated cardboard. So your Amazon boxes, those have pretty good value. Glass is the weakest. And it's partially because glass is so cheap to make. But it is one of those things that is a required recycle. And then I think it's, I don't remember the number, I apologize, but I want to say it's HDPE, which is like white plastic, I think, like a milk jug. So those have pretty good value.
Is it possible for the city to send out the reminder like they did before, what is recyclable and what?
We do that a couple of times
Do
a
you?
year.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We do it a lot in the water bill. So when our water bill goes out,
Yes.
whether mail or
Mhm.
electronic, there's a flyer in there.
Yes.
And we constantly do, if we have a repeat offender, and when I say repeat every week, even though we've talked to them, sometimes what we'll do is put their recycling bin in timeout. So we might pick it up, because we can't do anything like that. So what we'll do is we'll take the recycling bin and have them contact us, and then we bring it back to them and explain what can and can't go in there. So we try to do our best, but admittedly, one of our challenges is we are a military community, which is a great thing, but we're transient because of that.
Right.
So a large portion of our population changes over every couple of years. So education is key and continual.
All right, as discussed before the meeting, the holiday season is very quickly approaching. Lisa Miller and her media team has done a fantastic job recently when they went out to get public input for the firefighters, and they had that mustache. Who's got the best mustache competition, as well as the police department with their No Shave November. So they had really good, really high participation from the community in those events. And it does a couple things for us. And one of the biggest things that it does, and the way they did that was on social media platforms. So you got, some of the younger folks in the community that are really in tune to, those social media platforms. But one of the benefits that it did was not only generate interest in the city, but when people come to our social media platforms, to the city's webpage, to go and vote on something like that, we're getting our message out there. Because when you come to vote for a mustache, you also see our message about recycling, or you see our message about, there is a change in our sanitation route pickup for that week, or maybe there is an expected traffic advisory. So it benefits us in pushing the education piece out to the community that we're always trying to do. So for our decorating contest, we're going to announce those on the city's social media platforms as well, through our Twitter and through our Facebook, and potentially our typical web-based web platform. And we also expect to get the same level of participation from the community as well. So we expect to get more nominations, and we expect to get more votes from the community. And then the committee is going to continue to award the winners, the first, second, and third winner, they're still gonna receive an award from the Environmental Appearance Committee. And they're also gonna be recognized from our city council at one city. So we're pretty excited about that.
And if you have any nominations you would like us to gather for you, if you'll just let Derek or myself know, we will be happy to do that. Of course, you probably know more about social media than I do because I don't really have social media, but that's all right. I have kids that do.
And the last thing we wanted to point out is our water tanks here in the city. Our water tanks are really one of the most highly visible pieces of city property that we have, that people see every single day. This is the Highway 17 tank that just recently in the FY23 budget was brought into the asset management program. And just today, those crews finished an interior and exterior renovation of that water tank. So in addition to the outside getting a sharp new paint job, the inside was also renovated as well and cured out, and had some new valves put on. At the top there, looks like a weird disc that's there in the new photo, is an anti-freeze valve. I don't know a whole lot about water and water supply, but our water supply folks seem to be pretty happy and excited about it. But this tank is right next to Jacksonville Station. And as you know, Jacksonville Station has recently opened as well. So when you're coming down to 17 and you turn into that, if you're at that light where you're about to turn into Jacksonville Station, this water tank is really an overbearing feature right there at that intersection. And just a few months ago, and that's not even a before picture, but it was starting to look a little rough. So we think it came out well. It looks nice, it looks clean, and presents the image that we really how we want our city represented.
And when you talk about aesthetics, one of the things that, while it does not relate at all, if you see an old, rusted, dilapidated tank, do you really want to drink that water?
No.
It doesn't mean that the inside is taken care of completely different than the outside. The outside is exposed to the elements, but there is that perception piece that has an impact. So not to mention it's an expensive asset that we need to, if we don't properly maintain, we will have to replace. And I think I have one more. Mr. Carroll actually mentioned that the 22nd, 23rd is a busy weekend. And the Beirut Memorial is actually, the event is on the 23rd, which is that Sunday. In the past, this committee has put out some yellow ribbons around the community. If you are interested, what we like to do is give you a handful of yellow ribbons and just to ask you to place them at different locations around the community. I'll give you a handful when you leave. I know it looks like a small box for a big ribbon, but these are actually really neat. It looks like this. It looks like this. And you grab this string and put your hands under it and you push it up and it becomes this beautiful bow. And then you just tie this around the tree or the lamppost, or we put them out around City Hall area and the Freedom Fountain. So if you will take a handful of these and place them at your place of business or around your community, you would be a great help. We want to make sure that they're remembered.
It's the 39th anniversary.
And Chairperson, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Our next meeting will be Thursday, December the 1st at 6 o'clock here at the City Hall, and on February the 2nd and April the 6th, and June the, no, that's old stuff. Do I have a motion for us to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Thank you all of y'all for coming. And I'd like to congratulate you, Grace, for being our chairman, and you, Linda, for being our vice chair. Y'all do great, and I do appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.